In the 1980s and 90s, rival video games were heating up. The 2D platform genre was established and two franchises emerged. These two games would ultimately compete for the gamer, trying to win them over. These contenders were Super Mario Bros. By Nintendo and Sonic the Hedgehog by Sega Enterprises. Both games pushed the genre in different iconic ways, each with their own unique playstyles and musical scores. In 1985, Super Mario Bros. Showed us a new gameplay style, giving us a level design that hasn't aged in nearly 30 years. If you don't believe me, just look at Super Mario Maker on the Wii U, and even the 3DS. Sonic the Hedgehog showed us just how fast a 2D platformer could be, and helped us start the 16-bit era. The two franchises duked it out for generations, and with various spin-offs and even team-ups, to a degree, they are still fighting each other today. In today's episode of Video Game Rivals, we dive into the 2D platformer genre and take a look at two of the most iconic franchises in video game history, with Super Mario Bros. Versus Sonic the Hedgehog. Welcome to episode 2 of Video Game Rivals. In this episode, we have the grandfather of 2D platformers and a worthy challenger. I give you Super Mario Bros. Versus Sonic the Hedgehog. Super Mario Bros. Was released on the Famicom and Nintendo Entertainment System in 1985 as a follow-up to 1983's Mario Bros. The game was a major success, selling over 40 million copies worldwide in its lifetime. It spawned many successful sequels on the 8-bit hardware, like Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3, as well as countless others for later generations. There has been at least one Mario game released on all of Nintendo's video game systems to date, including the ill-fated Virtual Boy with Mario Tennis, which I might add was a great game. Nintendo's mascot, Mario, is very much like Disney's Mickey Mouse. He is known all over the world, and because of this, gamers have very high expectations when a new Mario game is released. Nintendo always makes sure their games are polished 100%, and in my opinion, it helps that there has never been a bad Super Mario game, which would include all of the spin-offs. For most of the 1980s and heading into the 90s, Super Mario had no competition, spawning 5 major releases, or 6 if you include the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2, or Lost Levels, until 1991, when Sega introduced Sonic the Hedgehog. In 1990, Nintendo released Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, to major fanfare. It was a smash hit, and Sega realized that if they wanted the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive in other parts of the world to be successful, they needed a mascot to take on the mighty Plum. Sonic the Hedgehog came out a year after Super Mario World, which in itself was a huge competitor. Both Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario World played completely different, with the only thing in common being that they were 2D platformers and had incredible music. Both games gave each other some major jabs. Super Mario World had several things going for it, like the sheer size of the game, and Mario's history. It did have 5 previous games after all. It was a large-scaled Super Mario game that offered many more gameplay features than its predecessor, Super Mario Bros. 3. It had brought new power-ups and a playable character called Yoshi. Sonic had something that Mario didn't though. He was fast. Sonic the Hedgehog was fast-paced platforming at its best. I remember when I first played it, it blew me away just how fast Sonic could run. It had to be the blast processing. It's the only thing that honestly could explain that. It was totally unlike anything that Super Mario had done. Sonic's sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released in 1992, had improved upon the original design of the first game. Sega added a new character, Miles Tails Prower, which is a pun on miles per hour due to how fast Sonic could run. He would follow Sonic throughout the game and would allow a second player to control him in a limited fashion. This was a big deal for my brother and I growing up, as I would race through the stage as Sonic and he would control Tails. Kinda easier that way fighting boss battles. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 also added in the now famous Spin Dash maneuver, which allowed both Sonic and Tails to burst forward quickly from a crouched stance, spinning into a ball. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 released in 1994, and later was followed by Sonic & Knuckles, which was a continuation of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Together, they actually complete how the game was meant to be played. They introduce yet another character, Knuckles, and new shields and improved graphics among other things. Sega was pumping out great Sonic games as fast as they could, for all of their systems at the time. The Sega Master System, the Game Gear, and the Genesis or Mega Drive. 2 years later, though, Nintendo would release their last 16-bit Super Mario to compete with Sega and its now very successful mascot. In 1996, Nintendo brought Mario into the 3D world. Super Mario 64 was something that gave gamers a fresh look at what a Mario game could be. It got rid of the time limits that the previous games had, and instead of the normal power-ups, added in hats, or caps, that had temporary powers such as the wing cap, which would allow Mario to fly, and the metal cap, which would turn Mario into a metal version of himself, and the vanish cap, allowing him to walk through obstacles. All three caps gave the player the powers necessary to beat each world. A few years later, Sega released the Dreamcast, which launched with Sonic Adventure. Sonic had been in the 3D world before, but not quite like this. Sonic Adventure was a leap forward for the series. When it released here in the States back in September 9th, 1999, it was the first game I got to try out on my new Dreamcast. It was breathtaking, with that first major level with the whale jumping and crashing into the dock you were running on. It was an incredible sight that was very memorable. There are many Super Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog games out there, too many for me to list and compare right now. But this battle has been going on for the better part of 25 years. For me, it's hard to choose the best franchise as I love both of them. However, Super Mario was first, and in my opinion has never had a bad game. Sonic, on the other hand, well, lately they have had several mediocre releases and have plagued Sega for years. The most recent releases from both franchises, they're pretty great. Super Mario Odyssey, a Game of the Year contender for 2017, on the Nintendo Switch, is pretty incredible. And Sonic Mania, which brought back Sonic's roots, is a gem. Sonic Forces, on the other hand, I'll just say it's not great, but it's not bad either. It's kind of in between for me. I think Sega could have done a bit better there, or perhaps let Sonic Mania be a standalone release for 2017, and brought out Sonic Forces in 2018 with a bit more polish. With the amount of history these two have, I may have to make another video that dives into each game one-on-one. Let me know your thoughts on that idea in the comments. As a franchise, my favorite is Super Mario Bros., but I do have some Sonic games that I prefer over the competing Mario games. Of the two, which franchise is your favorite? I would like to thank you for watching episode 2 of Video Game Rivals. Hit that like button if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, my link will be in the description. Thanks a bunch, and like always, happy gaming.